All right, welcome to round three of week four of the Legacy Mediocre League. I'm Danny Batterman. I'm joined with Dave Dobrin, and we're in for some hot Gristlebrand on Gristlebrand action.
Yeah, it looks like both players are playing a Reanimator, and they both drew the exact same seven, and each card is positioned in the exact same place. No,
what are what are the odds?
this is a Grizzlebrand mirror, but Brett is actually on Sneak and Show. His hand contains two Volcanics, two Sneak Attacks, Force Will, Spell Pierce, and Lotus Petal. Um, so Tim's hand looks really strong, right? He has the combo. He has Careful Study into Reanimate with an Underground Sea, or I guess Fetch Land.
Yep.
And he has it with Forcible backup. So I don't know who's on the play, but if he can get this down on turn two, I think he's strongly favored.
Yeah, in general, my experience is I found that Reanimator is actually favored in this matchup because not only is it faster, so you get to go under what Sneak is doing, but kind of what was alluded to earlier, Sneak and Show, it's very scary to actually cast the card Show and Tell because, you might let your opponent put in a, Tidespout Tyrant or an Ashen Rider, depends upon the list, or Gristlebrand that will draw them into one of those. For Tim's exact list, you can go, of course, to LegacyMediocreLeague.com, where all of our deck lists are featured.
So Tim actually drew into the ability to Forcible twice after this Reanimate. He only needs one. No, he does need both because Brett can Spell Pierce and then Forcible. So it looks like we're going to see a Reanimate, a Forcible battle, and then at the end of it all, Tim's going to have a Grizzlebrand in play.
Yeah, and even though Gristlebrand will be slightly, I guess, less effective, not only because of all of the life loss, but because part of the potent ability of Gristlebrand is the ability to just have it be this giant flighting beater that can draw into more counterspells, and 3 copies of Force of will be gone from Tim's deck. It's still a really quick clock, and Brett isn't going to have that much time. He's going to need to draw a Soul Land and a Fatty within the next 2 turns, otherwise he's probably just dead. I really like Tim's spot here.
Yeah, Brett can, I guess Brett can draw Soul Land, play it, and play a Sneak Attack, and then draw into an Emrakul. That's probably his best bet.
Yeah,
and hope that Tim can't beat it.
Yeah, Tim going for the draw 7 right away because he knows that Brett's deck has no pressure, doesn't have any lightning bolts, doesn't have any of that stuff to punish him, even if he does brick on counter spells.
Yeah, you know what? Actually, I didn't realize this was turn 2. Tim hadn't played his land yet. He can play his land, go for the Entomb Exhume, and get Iona.
Yeah, Iona is definitely one of the better cards you can get here. It's interesting. Do you name blue or red in this spot?
I think I named red. Sorry, blue. The only red card is Sneak Attack. It costs 4 mana, so Brett has to have 4 mana plus another mana source to sneak something, and just all the cantrips and whatnot are blue. And sure enough, Tim names blue with Iona.
So Brett's line of Soul Land into Sneak Attack, drawing into something is still an out, but he draws Show and Tell off the top, which not only is, dead card, Brett sees the writing on the wall, gives Tim the win.
Yeah, if he drew exactly, well, okay, no, I guess, so Tim still could have drawn 7 off of Grizzlebrand and found a card spell, but theoretically, Brett could have drawn exactly Soul Land into Emrakul and still had a shot at that game. Those had to be his 2 draw steps in order.
Yep. So, sideboards. Brett for sure is bringing in Grafdigger's Cage, because it shuts off all the graveyard shenanigans, and he's for sure bringing in Through the Breach, because his Show and Tells are bad. We've already, he knows this, so he's taking out his Show and Tells, and it looks like he's taking out a couple of Sensei's Divining Tops, which, I don't know if knowing that Tim has Thoughtseizes in his sideboard, I don't know if I fully agree with that, but at the same time, he also needs to keep his blue count high for Force of Wills.
Yeah, the reanimation, like, the best way for the Reanimator deck to interact in this matchup is just to cast discard spells, right? If the graveyard shut off, then they can cast Show and Tell. Well, I guess playing Show and Tell is very dangerous for either player here.
Yeah,
Um,
looks like Tim has decided to side out Show and Tells, but is bringing in Abrupt Decay, maybe possibly for thinking that Brett would bring in Blood Moon? I don't... Oh, for the Grafdigger's Cages. He's bringing in Abrupt Decay for the Grafdigger's Cages. So even though it might look like Brett doesn't have any targets, that is very sound counterboarding on Tim's part.
yeah, I was actually thinking the Golgari Charm might not be the worst for sneak attack, but I guess they have to not sneak anything in, and you have to resolve a Golgari Charm that's otherwise dead. Okay, so here we set go. Brett's going to be on the play for game 2. He has 2 Through the Breaches and a Grizzlebrand, but only 3 mana sources. And Tim looks like he opens up with a few cards. He doesn't have a way of getting a fatty into the graveyard, but he has Reanimator and Brainstorm.
Yeah, Brett also has Brainstorm Fetch Land along with an Enabler. He's only missing mana, so I think that's a reasonable Brainstorm fixes, and one of the Through the Breaches is a dead card to throw back, so I think that's a reasonable keep on his end as well. Brainstorm Fetch Land does go a long way in combo decks. I think there is a certain belief that one can fire off Brainstorms earlier. In this spot, like what? Is it still Brett's turn?
Okay, so Tim just drew and discarded Grizzlebrand, the old Analyst Dredge play.
We're on DDD, got it. Her draw discard Dredge for...
Yeah, and it looks like he's going to go for a 2/2 Reanimate, but this is going to get Spell Pierced. Brett is still 1 mana away from being able to cast his Through the Breach.
Yeah, if I were Tim... Oh, Tim drew a Force of Will for his turn. I was going to say, if I were Tim, a heads-up play would be playing the Lotus Petal so he could cast Brainstorm to try to dig for Force of Will if Brett has responses, and he still does it to try to draw a second Force of Will, but it turns out he's not going to need that.
Do you think that's really worth it? Like, maybe you play the Lotus Petal, but if your Reanimate gets Spell Pierced here, do you really want to blow your Lotus Petal just to Brainstorm?
Honestly, probably not, but nice to have the option. I come very much from the school of the AJ Sacher, thinking of Brainstorm, where the later you hold it, the better it gets. And the best Brainstorm is one you never cast, I think is the direct quote. So we have a small counterspell battle, we have a Grizzlebrand. This is looking a lot like game 1.
Yes, it does. But you know what? Oh wait, there's a Force Will. Never mind.
Yeah, I was going to say. and a Thoughtseize. Which Brett does not have protection from because he's already fired off his Brainstorm in the main phase. So Tim could go to... There's an argument for going to 1 here, but that means that Tim can't Force of Will if Brett rips something off the top.
That's a good point.
It depends on being reactive versus proactive.
Looks like he just cast Careful Study to draw a couple more cards.
Yep, discarding that Abrupt Decay. We don't need that anymore. Discarding the spare copy of Exhume. And he's got a Daze. So he's got Daze Force, blue card. So he's sitting there with a giant flying 7/7 Yawgmoth's Bargain.
Oh no, he has just double force.
Double force, okay. Yeah, his hand is now small enough that we can see it all.
Yeah, it just totally doesn't matter. Brett can't cast anything this turn. Tim's going to draw another 7 cards, or just like hit him and then cast Thoughtseize. Thoughtseize plus 2 Force of Will should be good enough against any 4-card hand.
Yeah, Thoughtseize isn't going to be as devastating as it would be normally because Brett's hand is literally 2 pair. So I guess he wins at poker. Actually, no.
We have a 2-pair mirror.
Tim's also sitting on 2 pair. We've got 2-pair mirror. And Gristlebrand's higher suit is a higher number though. He's got 8s and 5s versus 5s and 2s. That's how it works, right?
Something like that.
Something.
I don't actually play poker, so I don't know how to score those things.
Fair enough. Thoughtseize is going to resolve.
You probably just have to take it through the breach, right? Taking Grizzlebrand does nothing.
Oh yeah, 100%. Especially because if Brett tries to jam, doesn't draw Soul Land and tries to jam.
There's a sneak attack.
Yeah, well, Daze is still very live.
Yeah, just gonna Daze
alongside, Gristlebrand. We still can't activate Gristlebrand to try and find more fodder for Force of Will here.
It's totally
Because you're
unnecessary.
going to,
So
yeah, but it's not
Tim
needed at
knows
this point.
Tim knows all of Brett's hand if Brett goes for the sneak attack. He knows the coast is clear to Daze, and then there's just a through the breach in Brett's hand.
Yeah, through the breach, double Gristlebrand. We've still, and Tim's going to be able to attack for 7 next turn, but Brett is in the position where he has to just play like Tim has nothing, because Brett knows that Tim can't go digging for Force of Will. With
Yeah,
Gristlebrand
he
being
just
at
has
1,
to.
so he has to jam if he wants to have any hope of winning this day, but he's going to stare at a bunch of wispy things and get distracted by not having enough mana.
Oh, I'm
That's
surprised Tim didn't just draw again here. He only has access to one Force of Will.
oh, he now has the option to just, this way he doesn't have to discard down to hand size if he needs to go
Yeah,
digging.
but like
And
he could have found a way to entomb and exhume another fatty. He also could have Force of Willed that brainstorm because he knew the rest of Brett's hand and he had lethal on the way back.
yeah,
But
this looks like Brett is going to be setting up a defensive through the breach here to not die, sneaking Gristlebrand as a blocker, which, kind of a desperation move, but you got to do what you got to do. And there
and
comes the
it's
second
dazed.
days, and this one is going to be over.
Yeah, so Brett tried to cast a 4-mana and a 5-mana spell there, and he got dazed a couple times, hit by the free counter spell.
Yeah, for those of you who haven't really played Legacy, that's actually Daze is one of the hallmark cards in that sense, where part of the reasons why Dave's deck and my deck attacks the format from the angle that it does is that you don't normally see 4-drops or 5-drops unless they win you the game on the spot because of how constrained and mana efficient everything has to be due to Wasteland Daze and Stifle. And
Well,
that was just a perfect interaction of it right there.
I've looked through both of our deck lists, and none of those cards win the game on the spot.
They sound pretty mediocre.
All right, so next up we're going to have me versus Romario. It's going to be Birthing Pod or Cube 2 versus Eldrazi. So we're going to get ready for that. Stay tuned.
So
we'll be back.
Phyrexians versus Eldrazi's.
Yeah, Phyrexian versus Eldrazi. All right, see you guys in a bit.
Yep.